The last thing I saw before the platform rushed up to meet me was my brother's hand pulling away. 1 second, I was standing on the edge of the GO train platform at Union Station. The morning crowd pressing in around me. My coffee still warm in my hand. The next, I was face down on the concrete. My right arm twisted beneath me at an angle that told me before the pain did that something had snapped. People scattered. Someone screamed. I heard the train horn, and then the roar of it passing. And I remember thinking, with a strange, floating clarity, that I had just been an inch from being erased. My brother was somewhere in that crowd. He had walked up to me 30 seconds earlier. Smiled. Said he was heading downtown for a meeting. Small talk. Normal. And then the crowd surged, and I went over the edge. When the transit officers pulled me up, and the paramedics arrived, he was gone. He did not call the hospital. He did not text. He did not show up until 22 hours later. Standing in the doorway of my room at Toronto General, with flowers from the lobby gift shop, and an expression on his face that I recognized immediately. Because I had been reading it my entire life. He wasn't relieved. He was recalculating. The flowers were a prop. He was there to assess the damage. I'm Claire. I'm 32 years old. I work as a senior project manager for a civil engineering firm in downtown Toronto. And I know how to read a risk assessment. What I was looking at from my hospital bed, watching my brother set those lilies on the windowsill and arrange his face into concern, was a project that had gone off schedule. I was supposed to be dead. Instead, I was sitting up with a cast on my arm and a very clear memory of the pressure of his palm between my shoulder blades. He sat down, asked how I was feeling, mentioned that Mum had been asking about me, and I nodded and said I was doing okay. And I watched the tension leave his shoulders by a fraction. And I understood then that the most important thing I could do in that moment was let him believe his story was still intact. I did not tell him what I remembered. I smiled at the flowers. I said thank you for coming. That was the last honest thing I gave him, to understand why my brother needed me gone. You have to understand what our mother has. She is 67 years old. And 14 months ago, she was diagnosed with early-onset vascular dementia. She has good days and bad ones. And on the bad ones, she does not always know where she is or who is in the room with her. She lives at a private memory care facility in Hamilton, 45 minutes from the city. And the monthly fee is $4,300. She has a house in Ancaster that my father paid off before he died. She has a TFSA, an RRSP, that my father built over 30 years. And a small commercial lease, bringing in about $2,000 a month from the ground floor of a building on King Street West that my parents bought in 2003. Not a fortune, but enough, if managed carefully, to cover her care for the rest of her life. My brother had been managing it. 6 months before I hit that platform, he had quietly taken our mother to a notary on one of her better days and had a power of attorney for property signed and witnessed, listing him as sole attorney. I was at work. I had not been consulted. I only found out when her care facility left me a voicemail, saying that 2 months of fees had bounced and asking me to contact them about alternative billing arrangements. I called the facility. Then I called the bank. And a very polite customer service representative informed me that as of 3 weeks prior, the power of attorney on file for that account had been updated. My name was gone. My brother had locked me out of every account. Our mother's RRSP had been drawn down by $60,000. The rental income had been redirected. The house had a new line of credit opened against it for $90,000 that I had never heard of. When I confronted him, he told me I was being dramatic. He told me Mum had made her wishes clear. He told me I had always been the one who suffocated her, who hovered, who made her care about every little financial detail when she just wanted to live her last years in peace. He said it with that particular brand of smooth, practiced warmth that he has always used to make the cruelest things sound like they are being said for your own good. 3 weeks later, I went off the edge of a train platform with his hand on my back, from my hospital bed. While he was setting lilies on my windowsill, I was doing what I had been trained to do my entire career. I was mapping the project. I was identifying what I knew for certain versus what I suspected. I was thinking about timelines and evidence, and what a reasonable next move looked like. I asked the nurse, before my brother arrived, to flag my file under the hospital's privacy directive. Under PHIPA, Patients at Ontario hospitals can request that their information not be disclosed to callers or visitors without prior confirmation. The nurse looked at me carefully and said she would note it in my chart. My brother was already listed as next of kin. I asked her to remove that too. Effective immediately. Pending a formal update. She paused just long enough that I understood. She understood. And then she said she would take care of it. To the outside world. My room was a black box. I used my personal phone to call 2 people. The first was Sandra, who had been my family's estate lawyer since before my father died, and who had in fact, warned me 18 months ago that I should get a joint POA formalized before my mother's condition progressed. I had put it off. I should not have. The second call was to Marcus, a friend from university who had left a Bay Street litigation firm 4 years ago to run a private investigation practice in Etobicoke. I trusted him completely. Which is a short list. Sandra was in my room by early evening. Marcus was there an hour later. We talked for a long time with the door closed. What Marcus found in the next 72 hours was not surprising. It was clarifying. My brother owed $146,000 to people who do not take post-dated checks. He had been running deep in an underground poker circuit in Mississauga for almost 2 years. The kind of operation where the buy-ins are in cash, and the debt collection is not handled through small claims court. He had tried to cover the losses through his own line of credit. Maxed it. Borrowed from a friend. Defaulted. And had burned through most of his personal savings. He was 4 weeks away from a deadline that he could not extend with a phone call or a smile. The $60,000 he had taken from our mother's RRSP had bought him time. It had not bought him enough. He needed the rest of the estate. And he needed it fast. The house. The commercial property. The remaining investments. All of it liquidated would give him just enough to clear the debt with room to breathe. The only thing standing between him and that money was the fact that our mother was still alive, and I was still involved. He had tried to solve both problems. I had inconveniently survived the second one. Sandra and I spent 2 days constructing what came next. She is methodical and precise, and she does not raise her voice, which I have always admired. She called my brother and told him there was a complication with the estate assets. She told him that the bank had flagged the RRSP withdrawal for a compliance review, and that Revenue Canada had opened a preliminary inquiry into the transfer of the rental income. She told him that without a clean legal explanation, the assets could be frozen for an extended period, pending a full estate audit, which in complex cases could take upward of 18 months. She said it the way she says everything, which is as though she is simply relaying information that any reasonable person would want to know. He came to her office in Midtown the following Tuesday at 2 p.m. I was in the adjoining boardroom with Marcus and a digital recorder that Marcus had confirmed was admissible under Ontario's one-party consent rules. Sandra has a large office, with 2 windows overlooking Yonge Street, and a long table with 8 chairs that she had arranged very deliberately that morning. She sat behind her desk. My brother sat across from her. Between them, she had placed 2 folders. She explained the situation without drama. The compliance review and the Revenue Canada flag were real problems. The audit timeline was 18 months. Minimum. The assets would be inaccessible during that period. The care facility would need to be addressed through other means, which would likely require her to petition the court for an interim guardian. A process that would involve an assessment of all involved parties, including any individuals listed on the existing POA. She watched him process this. She told me afterward that she could see the moment he did the math and realized that 18 months was not a number he could survive. Then she touched the second folder. She said there was, potentially, a faster resolution. She said it reluctantly. The way you say something you know you probably should not. She said that the compliance review had been triggered by a concern about potential financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, but that if it could be established that the subject of the POA had, in fact, been experiencing a significant decline in judgment, and that a family member had been attempting to unduly influence her financial decisions in a way that had caused her distress, the review could be redirected, and the assets could be released much faster. Within weeks. Not months. She slid the second folder across the table. Inside was a statutory declaration. It stated that our mother, over the preceding year, had expressed clear and consistent fear of financial exploitation by her daughter. That she had sought to update her POA specifically because her daughter had been pressuring her to make decisions that were not in her best interest. That the daughter had a pattern of manipulative behavior that had caused their mother significant emotional harm. The daughter, in that document, was me. Sandra told him she was not recommending it. She told him it was legally complex and potentially problematic, if not done carefully. She told him she needed a few minutes to take a call, and left him alone in the office with the folder. He did not take a few minutes. He had his pen out before the door clicked shut. I watched on Marcus's laptop. The feed from the small camera Sandra had positioned on the bookshelf behind her monitor. My brother read the document in under 90 seconds. He did not pause on any particular section. He did not look conflicted. He signed it in 2 places. Initialed 3. And slid it back across the desk with the cap already back on his pen, by the time Sandra's heels were clicking back down the hallway. He looked at her when she came back in and he said, in that voice, the warm one, that he just wanted what was best for Mum, that this whole situation had been so hard on the family, that he hoped they could get it resolved quickly. Sandra looked at the signed declaration. She looked at him. She said she hoped so too. Then the boardroom door opened, and I walked in. I have thought about that moment many times since. The way the expression on his face moved through several versions of itself in the space of about 3 seconds. Confusion first, because I should not have been there. Then a flicker of something that looked almost like relief. I followed immediately by the version of him that I have known my entire life, the one that recovers fast. That finds the angle. That starts assembling a new story, before the old one has even fully collapsed. He said my name. I set the recorder on Sandra's desk, and told him it had been running since he arrived. The version of him that recovers fast did not recover this time. What came out of him instead was something I had never heard before. Which was the truth, without any packaging around it. He told me I had no idea what I was dealing with. He told me the people he owed money to were not patient, and that if I thought I could just walk in here and blow up his only way out, I was going to find out very quickly that I had made a serious mistake. He stood up. He was not crying. He was not apologetic. He was cold in a way that confirmed everything I had suspected about how long he had been capable of this. He moved toward the door. The 2 officers from the Financial Crimes Unit of the Ontario Provincial Police were waiting in the hallway. Sandra had filed a formal complaint for elder financial abuse under Section 380 of the Criminal Code 4 days earlier. Marcus had submitted his documentation, including the bank records, the redirect of the rental income, and the drawn-down RRSP, to the detective assigned to the case. The statutory declaration he had just signed, making a false statement under oath about a family member, in the context of a legal proceeding, was perjury. The camera footage would be provided in full. He was arrested in the hallway of Sandra's office building on a Tuesday afternoon in October, still wearing his coat. I did not feel triumphant. I felt the way you feel when a load-bearing wall you have been propping up for 30 years finally comes down and you realize the building was never sound to begin with. Not relief exactly. More like the sudden absence of a weight you had stopped noticing you were carrying. He was released on bail 2 days later. I expected it. I had spoken to the detective and Sandra about what might come next, and we had already put steps in place. A no-contact order was obtained that afternoon, covering both me and our mother's care facility. I had also contacted the facility directly and added a flag to her file that no visits from my brother were permitted without my prior written authorization and the approval of her attending physician, the care coordinator, a woman named Denise, who had known our family for over a year, assured me it would be enforced. What I had not fully anticipated was how quickly he would try to go around it. 48 hours after his release, Denise called me. My brother had arrived at the facility at 11 in the morning with a different document, something he had apparently printed and had notarized at a Shoppers Drug Mart, claiming to be an updated emergency contact form and requesting that our mother be transferred to a different facility in Brampton for a specialist assessment. He had presented it at the reception desk. The staff member on duty had been new. Our mother had already been brought to the front lobby when Denise intercepted it. I was in my car before Denise finished the sentence. I called Marcus on the way, and then I called the detective, who had apparently already received a call from the OPP officer assigned to the no-contact order. By the time I arrived at the facility, my brother was in the parking lot being spoken to by 2 officers. Our mother was back in her room. She was agitated and confused, and she did not fully understand what had happened. But when I walked in and sat down beside her and held her hand, she recognized me. That was enough. The violation of the no-contact order meant he went back into custody immediately. No second bail hearing. The original charges now included breach of a court order and attempted interference with a protected individual, which in this context, given our mother's documented cognitive status, carried significant additional weight. His lawyer tried for a plea to reduce charges. The Crown did not accept it. The trial took 4 days. The judge, a woman in her late 50s who looked at the bank records and the signed statutory declaration and the camera footage with an expression that Sandra later described as barely contained fury, did not take long to deliberate. My brother was sentenced to 3 years in federal custody for elder financial abuse under the criminal code, fraudulent conversion of estate assets, and perjury. He was ordered to make restitution of $211,000, covering the RRSP withdrawal, the unauthorized line of credit, 18 months of redirected rental income, and our mother's missed care facility payments plus interest. He does not have the money. His wages, if he has any when he is released, will be garnished until the order is satisfied. The family in our community does not talk about him with warmth anymore. He was well-liked. He had always been well-liked. He was the one people described as charming, as a good son, as the kind of man who called his mother on her birthday. People who knew us both have contacted me since the trial to say they are sorry. And what they are sorry about, I think, is not just what happened to me or to our mother. They are sorry because they liked him, and they are realizing what it costs to like someone without looking closely at what they do when no one is watching. 6 weeks after the sentencing, a letter arrived at my apartment. It was from a corrections facility in Kingston. His handwriting on the envelope, and inside it, several pages that I did not read, past the second paragraph. He was explaining how the charges had been politically motivated. He was explaining how Sandra had manipulated the proceedings. He was explaining how I had engineered his destruction because I had always been jealous of his relationship with our parents. I stood in my kitchen for a long moment. Then I folded the letter back along its creases, put it back in the envelope, and placed it in the recycling bin beside the coffee maker. Not the trash. Not a fire. The recycling. Because that is what it was. Material to be processed and forgotten. I went to see our mother that afternoon. She was having a good day. We sat in the sunroom and she asked me about work, and I told her about a project I was wrapping up in Scarborough, and she listened and smiled, and at one point patted my hand and told me I had always been the reliable one. I did not tell her about the trial. She does not need to carry that. It is already handled. Her care is fully funded now. The line of credit against the house has been cleared through the restitution order. The rental property is still generating income that goes directly into a trust Sandra set up, managed jointly by me and a professional trustee appointed by the court. There are no more folders with 2 stacks. There are no more phone calls about bounced payments. I sleep through the night in a way I had forgotten was possible. I am telling you this, not because I want you to see me as someone who won. I am telling you this because I need you to understand something about the kind of harm that does not leave bruises anyone can photograph. The kind that is perfectly legal, right up until it isn't. The kind that moves slowly through the documents of your family, through powers of attorney and account transfers and small decisions made while you were at work or asleep, or trusting that the people who share your last name are not actively building a case against your life. My brother was not born without a conscience. He was handed one set of rules for the world, and I was handed a different set. And neither of us questioned it until it became a matter of survival. What I know now, from the other side of it, is this. The first thing I know is that legal documents are not formalities. A power of attorney is not paperwork you file and forget. It is a transfer of control over someone's entire financial life. And it can be signed on a Tuesday morning by someone who is having a good day, and later used against everything that person ever worked for. If you have a parent or a loved one with a diagnosis, do not wait for the right moment. The right moment is now. Get a lawyer. Get it done jointly. Put protections in place before someone else decides to do it without you. The second thing I know is that charm is not character. The people who are the most socially smooth, the most well-liked, the ones everyone describes as good and warm and generous, can also be the most dangerous, because they have had years of practice moving through the world without being questioned. I was raised to see my brother's charm as evidence of his goodness. It was evidence of his practice. Goodness shows up in what people do when there is no audience. Watch for that instead. The third thing I know is that protecting yourself is not the same as being cruel. For a long time, I confused the two. I thought that setting limits with my brother, that refusing to cover for him, that reporting what I knew to be true, made me the difficult one, made me the one who didn't believe in family. People told me, in various gentle ways, that I should try harder to understand him, that he was going through something, that family is worth preserving. I heard that, and I held on to it longer than it deserved. But there is a version of family loyalty that is not loyalty at all. It is self-erasure. It is the ongoing performance of forgiveness for harm that is not stopped. And the person asking you to keep performing it is almost never the one paying the cost. That cost is yours. It comes out of your sleep, your savings, your safety, your sense of what is real. At some point, you have to decide that what you owe yourself is worth more than what you owe a story that was never true to begin with. I am still in Toronto. I have a good job. A small apartment near the Danforth with a kitchen I like. And a standing Saturday afternoon visit with our mother that I have not missed in 8 months. She is well cared for. On the days she knows exactly who I am. She asks me if I am happy. I tell her I am getting there. That is the truth, and it is enough. My brother will be eligible for day parole in 18 months. I do not think about that very much. The no-contact order will be renewed. Sandra has already begun the paperwork. Whatever he decides to do with the time he has left is not something I can manage. And managing it is not my job anymore. His name in our community now means something specific. It is a story people tell carefully. It will follow him in ways that a sentence eventually ends, but a reputation does not. He wanted to take everything I had. What he has instead is a record, a restitution order, and a version of himself that the people who liked him now have to reconcile with who they thought he was. I am not glad about any of it. But I am clear. Clarity, I have found, is worth more than gladness. Gladness is a feeling. Clarity is a foundation. And for the first time in my life, what I am standing on holds.